Financial transparency is a huge part of couples having a great relationship. And the reason is because when there's not financial transparency, that's where the question of trust, safety, security starts to come up.
I am excited for today's show. We have a great guest, and we're coming to you live from the Shift Conference in Orlando. I want to welcome Ashley Quamme, the owner and founder of Beyond the Plan. Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Listen, we're going to spend some time on talking about Beyond the Plan, but how did you get here? I'm always fascinated with the entrepreneurial journey. What led you to launching Beyond the Plan? What brought you to that point?
So I'm a therapist, licensed marriage and family therapist by education and trade. I've been practicing for almost 15 years. I have my own private practice, The Wealthy Marriage, where I currently really serve more of a director kind of role in that. But several years ago, seeing a lot of couples, money obviously was showing up on my couch,
Surely.
Right?
Yeah.
And found myself in this place of not really knowing exactly how to help, because believe it or not, they don't teach therapists how to do money or just how to relate to it at all.
They don't teach financial advisors either.
Yeah. Right. So I just, kind of a long story made short, I went on this search educationally, found financial therapy, became certified as a financial therapist, then really found myself, in this place of, hey, I'm hearing my clients talk a lot about their advisors, and there's this disconnect. My advisor doesn't get me. They don't understand me, or maybe even sometimes communication with them feels, disjointed. And so I kind of started to wonder, maybe I could be helpful in that space. My husband, full transparency, is a financial planner.
Sure.
So, lots of conversations there. And really that idea just kind of started to evolve. Went to Shift, this conference we're here at right now, last year, and decided I was going to jump in, just both feet, and really start to focus more on how I can bring value to advisors and to their firms, incorporating everything that I know and have learned from a therapy practice, from couples, families, all of that.
Wow. So shifted your trajectory.
It did.
Yeah, and this is my first year here. It's been fantastic, and I love the human aspect, and we're hearing a lot more of what you're doing and what you're talking about is becoming more and more commonplace, which I think is so important. So, why do you think it's so important for people to understand why they think the thoughts that they do around money?
Yeah, everything we've been talking about here, this weekend, but is really centered around the thoughts lead to the feelings that we experience as humans. And those feelings that we experience then lead to actions. So I have a quote or a saying that I have, like stickers and mugs with it on. It's think, feel, do. And it's really simplistic in nature. I've probably
In that order?
In that order.
Okay.
Think, feel, do. And so it is an oversimplification, obviously, of a process. But from a behavioral standpoint, understanding, you can't really create change, I guess, from a behavior standpoint, the do aspect, unless you understand what's going on below the waters. Mm-hmm. So unless you understand what the feelings and then the thoughts are around that, change is going to be difficult, or, I don't want to say impossible, but
money integrates in so many of those conversations. One of the things that fascinated me is, your LinkedIn cover photo says helping your firm implement the human side of financial planning. And I think it's ideal that we're recording here a Shift that we just talked about. What do you mean by that? I mean, I think I know, but share with the listeners, what do you mean by, I think it's ideal helping your firm implement the human side of financial planning?
As advisors, you've dedicated, whether you realize this or not, your professional life to helping and serving other humans. And so much of that focus, from what I've found, my experience, has been on the what I call above the waters part, the numbers, the spreadsheets.
The stuff you see.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, thinking about just the whole human, there's a lot of other things you don't see about your clients. And so my role really is coming in and partnering with firms and helping their advisors to understand what are all the things you're not seeing here. whether it's in a client meeting, whether it's on a behavioral assessment, conversationally, what are those things that you're not seeing, the beliefs, attitudes, feelings, thoughts, and how can we explore those conversationally? How can we begin to understand them in a deeper way that will help to inform the planning process, ultimately impacting the client's well-being?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And even more so after this week, we had a family that we were delivering a financial plan to. And in the middle of delivering the financial plan, I don't even remember how it came out, but the wife decided to let us know, I think it was when we were talking about life expectancy, that she had MS.
Oh, wow.
And we've known this family for years. We've gone through we were at the end of the financial planning process, never came out.
Wow.
And all of a sudden we were talking about life expectancy and pension options. And all of a sudden she felt like it was the right place. And I was like, this is important stuff. And it kind of made me reflect that maybe we should have done a better job up front, asking some of those questions. It's a little uneasy sometimes asking people about their health and whatnot. But, how did you come up with the idea? You mentioned it earlier, the wealthy the wealthy marriage. How did you come up with that idea? And what do you mean by that term?
Yeah, that was one of those late night thoughts, conversations with my husband on the couch of like, hey, I think that there's something maybe there, right? From a name place. But really what I mean by a wealthy marriage is I think of wealth not just from a financial sense. That is certainly one aspect of wealth, but wealth also incorporates your relationships, healthy relationships, the relationship you have with yourself on an individual level, spiritual, all the other things, right? And if we have all of those and they're working together in a really synergistic way, then we really do have a wealthy life. Because I'm a couples therapist, I focus mostly on that romantic relationship dynamic. And so my goal, my hope, my passion is really then helping couples create their vision and version of what a wealthy marriage looks like, because it's different for each couple, for each person.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, I think it's so important that, you cater to the whole person. Like you said earlier, we talk a lot about mental health and physical health and financial health, and that three-legged stool, which has changed. It used to be, when I first started in the profession, the three-legged stool was Social Security, pension, and creating your income from your investment portfolio. That's gone out the window. Now it's really your financial health, your mental health, and your physical health. And if you don't have all those working for you in the right direction, it makes it very difficult, even more so in a marriage situation. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. And couples, they want to have a healthy relationship. It may not seem like it on the surface, right? But there's a lot of desire and longing. I talk about longing. There's a lot of longing there. And if I say we as in advisors, maybe even therapists, right? If we can work together in this way of creating their version of a wealthy life or a wealthy marriage, then I think we've hit the jackpot in terms of purpose.
I agree. How did you, you're a couples therapist, how do you move into, I know you mentioned that like aha moment, I guess like last year at Shift, but really how do you transition those skills, or is it exactly the same skills, or is it different from a couples therapist to a fractional financial behavioral officer?
A lot of them I would say are the same, or similar enough, right? And so a lot of it's also based in science and things that are already out there. There's several models that I feel like are really great. There's an overlap there from an application piece, motivational interviewing, positive psychology, these skills that we learned as therapists maybe from those models, they also apply to advisors. And so my role has been taking what is it that I know, how can I maybe simplify it, also change some of the language. I've learned that maybe the hard way is that the words that I use sometimes don't land as well.
I think financial professionals understand that, right?
Yeah. And so changing that jargon in such a way that it fits and lands on advisors to where not only they get it, but there's also some motivation and desire there to, I want to learn how to do that. I want to learn how to ask scaling questions better with my clients, because as a diagnostic tool, it really helps me know, gauge, and measure, right, change or even progress and value.
Yeah. I mean, do you think most people could use the benefits of a financial therapist, along the lines of what you're doing? I mean, do you think most people would benefit if they went through that process?
I am 1,000% biased, Larry, obviously on answering that, but I would say yes. I would say that there is value. It would be beneficial for anyone, even if you have a healthy relationship with money, to be able to explore some of the below the water stuff that's there.
Right.
Understanding your money story. Why is it that you think the way that you do?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you feel the way you do?
Right.
Why do you do what you do as it relates to money? Sometimes just having that awareness allows us to really make more conscious choices, right?
Yeah.
And live more congruently with what we value as well.
Yeah. And I mean, just because you think you have a good relationship with money doesn't necessarily mean that you really do.
Correct.
And I think that really makes a case for a lot of the things we're talking about. We've talked about it with AI and online. This is stuff that is not going to get replaced by technology. We need that human
Right.
interaction for that. What do you have, what advice do you have for a couple who, every time that discussion of money comes up, the conversation ultimately ends up in an argument, right? Are there some takeaways, some tips you can give our listeners that might be helpful in situations like that?
Yeah, some of the basics stem a lot from Dr. John Gottman's work on couples. And so for any of your listeners who have a curiosity around just how to do relationships better, he's been doing research for 30, 40 years now, and he's really kind of crafted a science around what makes marriages work, not just from a financial standpoint. So I'll offer that as just a general resource. One of the things that I encourage couples to do is to learn how to fight fair. We think fighting and arguing about things is inherently bad, but we can learn a lot about our partner if we can have healthy arguments and discussions. And so if you can learn how to fight fair, right, argue in a fair way, there's a lot that you can learn if you would be open-minded to that. So, making sure that we're not doing the below the belt types of punches,
Right.
some of those obvious things that we may know, but also revisiting conversations. Oftentimes couples, they get into these tensions, these heated points, these arguments, and then the dust kind of settles, but they never come back to really understand what meaning was being derived from in those conversations.
Sure.
And I don't know about you and your marriage. I won't get into that, but I know even within mine and the couples that I see, sometimes the narrative that I ascribe to a conversation that I had or what Clayton may have said, sometimes is so far from what he actually either meant or said. And there's a lot of,
That happens.
it cannot, sometimes that's not always a great thing. So learning how to fight fair would be one. Revisiting heated conversations and trying to distill or understand it in a deeper way. But also, being, willing from just like a practical place to accept some influence from your spouse.
Yep.
It can be hard depending upon our personality type, but, we're not always right.
Yeah. Well, to that point, and his name is escaping me. I don't know if you're familiar with the 80-80 marriage, but that book, but that was along those lines where you don't have to win 100% of the time.
Right.
There's got to be right there because of 80-80. There's a bit of a give and take there that has to exist.
Yeah.
How do you recommend, let's say you have a couple that has different spending habits, right? I know in my household, my wife and I are very different, but that's a good thing because she might be a little bit more free to spend. I'm a little more conservative when it comes to it, unless my kids call me Vacation Larry. When I'm on vacation, that thing goes out of the window. So when we're on vacation, like here in Orlando, it's like Vacation Larry, so anything goes, but that's their term for me. How does somebody navigate that kind of situation?
This comes back to some of what we talked about a little bit earlier, is really trying to learn about your partner in a deeper way. Why do they spend the way that they do? What is contributing to that? Is it from maybe a place of scarcity that they experienced during childhood or feeling deprived? Trying to understand them in a deeper way. Maybe you know a lot about them, but maybe you've never made that connection as to how it relates to your partner's spending habits or saving habits,
Right.
if you will. So first and foremost, being willing to have a different conversation with your spouse from just a place of learning, coming at it from a place of curiosity. Obviously, this can be where working with a financial advisor, working with a financial therapist can really help that. But, being able to explore those things with your partner can start to help things make a lot of sense. The second piece would be is seeing where the strength lies, right, in that, because as you said, there is strength to each of those sides.
Well, I think because we have the balance, it works. I think it would be more troublesome if we were both spenders or we were both savers. I see those as possibly two more challenging environments to be in at times than having that balance.
Yeah, it certainly can be. And so maybe there's a different approach kind of there, but it's still a strength. And even within that, there's probably some nuances there around what does each partner like spending on, right? And so where is the strength in that? And then there's really a commitment that has to be made to, looking down the line and creating a vision or version of our marriage and our life that is aligned with our values and what we want for ourselves, not just now, but in the future.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the other thing is, in a marriage, you want everything kind of full transparency, similar to the way we work with families that we serve, full transparency. But ultimately, how do you deal with situations when somebody in a relationship might be keeping a secret, right? Or not willing to share those money issues? How do you get around those hurdles? Are there clear paths to do so?
I would say there can be usually that work. I laugh because I'm like, oh man, yeah, that's some deep stuff. And working with a financial therapist or a couples therapist can be a really great avenue to explore for that. But financial transparency is a huge part of, couples having a great relationship. And the reason is because when there's not financial transparency, that's where the question of trust, safety, security starts to come up from more of a gut kind of level. We may not name it that, but if you're having that question of do I trust or can I trust my partner, that's not a great place to be in a relationship.
For any reason.
If there's any kind of lack of financial transparency, or another name might be financial infidelity, right? Which some people start getting real uncomfortable. They hear that word infidelity. But if there's not that, then those are red flags that couples need to be mindful of. And I don't mean being very, very dramatic and, freaking out, but saying, hey, like, this isn't a really good pattern. Like, we need to attune to this so that we can learn more. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We have a resource coming out for a checklist for newly engaged couples, which we're going to have in the show notes here. It was something that came out of, really was born from the families we serve, wondering if we had this kind of resource for their kids or grandkids that were getting married. I'm curious to know, do you have any position on family finances, getting married? I know there are different schools of thought in terms of combining finances, keeping it separately. We've seen even hybrid, right? Husband and wife or spouses keep separate accounts and they have joints. Anything, any position along those lines in that respect?
Yeah, I think the research shows that, really both can work for a couple. So I'm not into let's pick one, and one is, from an absolute place.
It's personal.
But it has to work for both partners. And so if one partner is really pushing for separate accounts and the other partner is not, that's not going to work. Right. And so whatever it is that it's decided, it's probably fine and it's probably great. However, it has to work for both. The only thing that I will say is that when there are either all or multiple separate accounts, when they're kept separately, it's even more important that there is a level of financial transparency there. And that's, so that trust and safety can be, it's still in the relationship.
And I mean, is that as simple as everybody having access to it, or is it more than that?
I think it can be. Yeah. I think if that's satisfying to your partner, then great. But there are some partners that they're like, I don't want my partner having access to that. And so, my question usually is
that a red flag in itself? Yeah.
I don't know if I would say it's a red flag, but I would want to learn more about that. What is it what is the underlying emotion or worry there, as to your partner being able to have visibility around that. And so let's just explore it and see where we get to. When I've done that with partners, oftentimes it is more of a fear or worry that comes up for different reasons.
Right.
And sometimes when we explore that fear or worry, maybe we dispel it. Then, for some, they're like, oh, I guess, yeah, you're right. Maybe that is a silly thing to worry about, and I don't actually really care right about it. There could be a false narrative right there at play.
So what I'm hearing, I mean, it could even change over time. It's just a matter of being on the same page, having a conversation, understanding what each person wants, and making sure everybody's being kind of heard and listened to in the relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I've heard you mention that it's important that both partners know that they are right at some point, right? What does that mean? Is it as simple as just listening and feeling validated, or is it more than that, really?
No, I think it is. I like to do this exercise with my couples where I draw what looks like a 6, and I put it on a clipboard, and then I'll put it in front of them where both of them are looking. And for you, Larry, because you're across from me right now, right? For you, it's going to look like a 9.
Right.
For me, it looks like a 6.
Right.
There's nothing that I can say, Larry, that's going to convince you that number is a 6, because you see it as a 9.
Well, unless you turn it upside down.
Unless I turn it upside down, right? Which thankfully none of my couples have done in session. But, from a perspective place, it's understanding that your partner's perspective can be right. Yeah. But their right perspective doesn't mean that yours is wrong.
Right.
Like, you can be both right. From a place of validation, oftentimes people think that, well, if I validate my partner's experience, then that means I agree. And that doesn't have to be the case. Validation is really just honoring and recognizing, acknowledging their experience and saying, I see you, I get it. Doesn't mean that you agree. My couples, sometimes they tell me things that they do, and maybe you have this as an advisor, that I'm like, well, gee, gosh, golly, I sure can understand where you'd get that way, but I don't agree with it.
Right.
But I can understand it.
Sure.
It's really what we're doing here with our partners.
Sure. We see that all the time. They want to do this, and you can talk to them about all the above the water reasons why they shouldn't,
right?
And they still want to do it,
right?
So it makes sense, and I love that example, and I'm probably going to use that.
Please do.
When spouses don't get along, I'll draw the 6 and put it in between
I
them.
hope that yours don't ever turn it.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll let you know. I'll keep you in the loop on that. So listen, we're gonna we're all about joy on the Mitlin Money Mindset. And we end each of our shows asking each of our guests the same last question. And that is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
Well, I came here to the conference. I showed up. And in terms of why, I guess that brings me joy is being in community with other people where it's like-minded, right?
Sure.
You feel a sense of being at home. The other thing that I did that brought me joy, and maybe joy, I don't know, maybe it's a strong word, but is I got up early, and I've been in this, kind of new thing here the last year of trying to wake up early and just have some time to myself. And I find that when I do that, there is greater joy kind of more throughout my day.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I wake up early every day. So I get it. I just can't exercise when I'm I haven't had any time on the trip. So that's taken away from my joy on the trip. But
I do understand
that. But I try to tap in. So listen, we're going to have all of your information in the show notes. But if people want to learn more about you, want to connect with you, what's the easiest and the best place for them to do that?
I hang out a lot on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn and Twitter. I do hang out sometimes on Instagram, but I'll be honest, I'm not as maybe consistent there. But you can find me, Ashley Quamme. My business, my practice, Beyond the Plan, is there. Typing it into the good old-fashioned Google search engine and finding me there. Yeah.
Well, Ashley, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I'm so excited we got this time at Shift and got some human interaction face-to-face, because most of our shows are done over internet.
Yeah.
So we're doing it through a screen. So it's nice to do these face-to-face at a human-first event like Shift. And I thank you for being our guest today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.